The morning sun cast long shadows across Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Detective Sarah Chen stood at the entrance of the Holly Terrace Mausoleum, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the court order. After 14 years of rumors, conspiracy theories, and relentless pressure from fans worldwide, this document represented something she never thought she would see: legal permission to open the tomb of Michael Jackson. Sarah had been a rookie detective when the King of Pop died in June 2009. Now, at 42, she had risen through the ranks to become one of the most respected investigators in Los Angeles. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this moment. The case had resurfaced 6 months ago when an anonymous letter arrived at the precinct, containing information that only someone present during the original burial could have known. The letter spoke of inconsistencies, of secrets sealed behind marble and bronze, of a truth that the world deserved to know. Behind her stood a carefully selected team: forensic pathologist Dr. Marcus Webb, who had examined countless remains throughout his 30-year career; Amanda Rodriguez, a documentary filmmaker granted exclusive access to record the proceedings; two representatives from the Jackson estate, their faces masked a professional composure hiding deep anxiety; and a security detail of 6 armed guards. The media had been kept completely in the dark. Any leak could trigger a global frenzy that would make the investigation impossible. Dr. Webb approached Sarah, his weathered face grave. "Detective, I need you to understand what we're about to do. This isn't just opening a tomb. We're potentially unraveling one of the most documented deaths in modern history. If we find anything that contradicts the official narrative, it won't just be news. It will shake the foundations of public trust in everything from the medical examiner's office to the legal system itself." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle on her shoulders. She had read every page of the case file, watched every interview, studied every autopsy report. The official cause of death was acute propofol intoxication, administered by Dr. Conrad Murray. The doctor had been convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 2 years. The case was closed, or so everyone believed, but the anonymous letter had raised questions that haunted Sarah's dreams. It mentioned a birthmark on the body that wasn't documented in any official record. It described specific items placed in the casket that were never publicly disclosed. Most disturbing, it suggested that certain physical evidence had been deliberately overlooked during the original examination. The letter writer claimed to be someone who had been present during the private burial, someone whose conscience could no longer bear the burden of silence. Amanda adjusted her camera equipment, her professional demeanor barely concealing her excitement. This footage would either make her career or end it. She had signed a non-disclosure agreement that threatened severe legal consequences if she released any material without authorization, but she knew this story was bigger than any contract. The world had mourned Michael Jackson. Millions of fans still gathered annually to honor his memory. What they were about to discover could either bring closure or tear open wounds that had never truly healed. The Jackson estate representatives, Thomas Garrett and Linda Park, stood off to the side, engaged in whispered conversation. Thomas kept checking his phone, presumably updating the family members who had reluctantly agreed to this investigation. The Jackson family had been divided on the decision. Some wanted answers, desperate to understand the full truth of what happened that terrible day in June 2009. Others felt this was a violation, a desecration of sacred ground that would only fuel more conspiracy theories and bring unnecessary pain. Sarah approached the sealed entrance to the specific chamber. The bronze door bore no nameplate, maintaining the privacy that the family had fought so hard to preserve. She placed her hand against the cool metal, closing her eyes for a moment. She thought about the man who lay beyond this barrier, not the superstar, not the icon, but the human being. Michael Joseph Jackson had been many things: a child prodigy who revolutionized music, a controversial figure whose personal life generated endless speculation, a father, a son, a brother. Whatever they found today, Sarah promised herself she would treat him with the dignity every person deserved in death. "It's time," Dr. Webb said softly, breaking her reverie. A specialist from the mausoleum stepped forward with the keys and access codes. The security system was state-of-the-art, designed to prevent exactly what they were about to do. But the court order was absolute, signed by a judge who had reviewed the anonymous evidence and deemed it substantial enough to warrant this extraordinary measure. The locks disengaged with a series of mechanical clicks that seemed impossibly loud in the silence. Sarah felt her heart racing as the door slowly swung open, revealing a dimly lit chamber beyond. The air that escaped was cool and dry, carefully climate-controlled to preserve whatever lay within. Amanda raised her camera, red recording light glowing like a warning beacon. They stepped inside, and the door closed behind them with a sound like fate sealing itself. The chamber was smaller than Sarah expected, perhaps 20 feet square, with walls of polished marble. In the center stood an ornate bronze casket, its surface gleaming despite the years. Flowers, long since dried, lay arranged around it, tributes from the private funeral that only family and closest friends had attended. Sarah took a deep breath, nodded to Dr. Webb, and spoke the words that would change everything. "Let's begin." Dr. Marcus Webb approached the casket with the reverence of a man who understood he was about to cross a threshold that could never be uncrossed. His gloved hands moved carefully over the bronze surface, examining the seal for any signs of previous tampering. Behind him, Amanda's camera captured every movement, every breath, every shadow that danced in the mausoleum's subdued lighting. The whir of the recording equipment was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. "The seal appears intact," Dr. Webb announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "No visible signs of disturbance since the original interment. Sarah, I need you to document this verbally for the record." Sarah stepped forward, her digital recorder held firmly in her hand. "Detective Sarah Chen, case number 78942 Alpha. Date, October 13th, 2025. Time, 9:47 a.m. Present are myself, Dr. Marcus Webb, Amanda Rodriguez, Thomas Garrett, Linda Park, and security personnel. We are about to open the sealed casket of Michael Joseph Jackson pursuant to court order number." She continued through the legal documentation, her voice growing stronger as procedure gave her something concrete to focus on. Thomas Garrett moved closer, his face pale. "Detective, I need to call the family one more time before you proceed. They deserve to know the exact moment this happens." Sarah nodded, and Thomas stepped into the corner, his urgent whispers barely audible as he spoke into his phone. Linda Park remained rooted in place, her eyes fixed on the casket as if willing it to remain closed through sheer force of will. Dr. Webb removed a specialized tool from his equipment case. The casket is a Promethean model, top of the line, designed to be hermetically sealed. Breaking this seal will require precision. Once opened, we'll need to work quickly but carefully. The preservation state of the remains will tell us a great deal about the conditions maintained here. He positioned the tool at the first seal point, then paused, looking at Sarah. "Last chance to reconsider. Detective." Sarah shook her head. "The letter writer knew things nobody outside the burial party could know. We have to see this through. For the truth, whatever it is." The tool engaged with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Dr. Webb worked methodically around the casket's perimeter, breaking each seal point with practiced efficiency. The sound seemed to echo through the chamber like a heartbeat, steady and inexorable. Amanda shifted position to capture different angles, her professional instincts overriding the surreal nature of what she was witnessing. Thomas returned from his phone call, his expression grim. "The family is gathered together. They are watching a live feed I'm transmitting to them. Janet insisted on being present, even if only virtually." He held up his phone, and Sarah could see multiple faces on a video call, all frozen in various expressions of anguish and anticipation. The final seal broke with a sound like a sigh. Dr. Webb stepped back, allowing a moment for any remaining gases to dissipate. "We wait 3 minutes for air exchange," he announced. "Standard protocol." Those 3 minutes stretched into an eternity. Sarah found herself thinking about all the times she had listened to Michael Jackson's music, at her middle school dance, during her college years, in her car during difficult cases. His voice had been the soundtrack to multiple generations. Now she was about to see the man behind that voice in a way no one should ever have to witness. The 3 minutes elapsed. Dr. Webb nodded to his assistant, a younger pathologist named Jennifer Hayes, who had been standing quietly to the side. Together, they positioned themselves at either end of the casket. "On 3, Dr. Webb said. 1, 2, 3. They lifted the lid, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The casket's interior was lined with cream-colored silk, still pristine despite the years, and there, lying in repose, was a figure that made everyone in the room freeze in shock. The body was remarkably preserved, almost impossibly so. But it was what Sarah saw, or rather, what she didn't see, that caused a breath to catch in her throat. "Dear God," Dr. Webb whispered, leaning closer. His trained eye was scanning rapidly, taking in details that would need hours to fully process. But even in these first seconds, something was clearly terribly wrong. Amanda's camera continued recording, capturing the moment that Thomas Garrett stumbled backward, his phone clattering to the marble floor. The video call screen showed the Jackson family members reacting in real time, some covering their mouths, others leaning closer to their screens, all trying to process what they were seeing. Sarah forced herself to move closer, to look directly at what lay before them. The figure in the casket wore a formal black suit, white shirt, and sequin glove on the right hand, the iconic image the world associated with the king of pop. But there were details that made no sense, details that contradicted everything in the official reports. Dr. Webb was already taking measurements, photographs, documenting everything with the meticulous care of someone who knows his findings will be scrutinized by experts worldwide. Jennifer assisted, her hands shaking slightly as she held various instruments. "The level of preservation is extraordinary," Dr. Webb muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "This doesn't match the expected decomposition timeline. Not even close." Linda Park finally found her voice. "What does that mean? What are you saying?" Before Dr. Webb could answer, Sarah noticed something else. She leaned over the casket, her eyes fixed on the figure's left hand. There, on the back of the hand, should have been the birthmark mentioned in the anonymous letter, a small, distinctive mark that Michael Jackson had from birth. She had seen it in countless photographs and videos over the years. Every fan knew about it. But as she looked at the pale skin before her, she saw nothing. The hand was unmarked, smooth, completely free of any birthmark. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Could preservation techniques have somehow affected the skin's pigmentation? Could they have made such a distinctive marking disappear? She looked at Dr. Webb, whose expression told her he had noticed the same thing. "We need to conduct a full examination," Dr. Webb said, his voice tight. "Temperature readings, tissue samples, dental comparison, everything. Sarah, whatever we thought we knew going into this." He trailed off, staring at the figure in the casket. "We need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that nothing we were told 14 years ago was accurate." Amanda continued filming, her camera capturing the moment when the greatest mystery in modern entertainment history began to unravel. Outside the mausoleum, the world continued its normal rhythm, completely unaware that inside this sealed chamber, everything had changed. The examination room had been set up adjacent to the burial chamber, a temporary laboratory filled with equipment that Dr. Webb and his team had brought for this unprecedented investigation. The figure from the casket now lay on a sterile examination table, still clothed, still enigmatic. Sarah watched as Dr. Webb worked with the intensity of a man who knew he was documenting something that would rewrite history. "Jennifer, start with photography. Full body, every angle, with and without measurement scales," Dr. Webb instructed. "I want documentation that will stand up to scrutiny from every expert on the planet, because that's exactly what's going to happen when this goes public." Jennifer nodded and began her work, the camera flash creating stark moments of illumination in the dim room. Sarah stood beside Thomas and Linda, who seemed to have aged 10 years in the past hour. The video call with the Jackson family remained active, though most of them had fallen silent, watching with expressions of shock and confusion. Sarah could hear occasional whispers, fragments of conversation that spoke of disbelief and desperate hope for rational explanations. Dr. Webb began his verbal documentation. Subject appears to be an adult male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches in height. The body shows an unusual state of preservation inconsistent with 14 years of interment, even under optimal conditions. Initial observation reveals several concerning discrepancies. He moved to the hands, carefully examining each finger. Notable absence of the documented birthmark on the left hand. This marking was prominent in the subject's life and should still be visible even with significant decomposition or preservation treatment. Could it have faded? Linda asked desperately. Maybe the embalming process or something chemical. Dr. Webb shook his head slowly. Birthmarks are typically from blood vessels or pigmented cells in deeper skin layers. They don't simply vanish. This is a significant finding. He continued his examination, moving to the face. Facial structure appears consistent with photographic evidence, but I'm noting some irregularities in the ear cartilage shape. Ears are like fingerprints, unique to each individual. We'll need detailed comparison. Amanda had positioned a camera on a tripod, ensuring continuous recording while also taking still photographs with a second camera. Her journalist instinct told her she was witnessing something massive, something that would dominate headlines for months or years. But she also felt a growing sense of dread. Whatever they were discovering, it was clear that the official narrative of Michael Jackson's death and burial was about to collapse. Sarah pulled out her tablet, accessing the anonymous letter that had started this investigation. She read portions aloud. "The birthmark you will not find. The hands you touch are not the hands that created magic. The truth was buried with lies, and the lies will be revealed when the seal is broken." At the time, these words seemed like the ravings of a conspiracy theorist. Now they felt like a prophecy. Dr. Webb called for his dental equipment. Teeth are the most reliable form of identification after DNA. We have extensive dental records of Michael Jackson due to his numerous dental procedures over the years. He carefully opened the figure's mouth, using a specialized light to examine the teeth. The silence that followed stretched unbearably. "Marcus," Jennifer prompted when he said nothing for a full minute. "This is impossible," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "These teeth don't match the dental records. Not even close. The pattern of fillings, the specific crown work, the bite alignment, none of it matches." He stepped back from the table, removing his gloves. "Sarah, we need to run DNA analysis immediately, but I can tell you right now with professional certainty, this is not Michael Jackson." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Thomas's phone slipped from his hand again, the screen showing multiple family members in various states of shock. Some were crying. Others appeared frozen, unable to process what they had just heard. Linda Park slid down the wall to sit on the floor, her professional composure finally shattered. "Then who is it?" Sarah demanded, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. "And where's Michael Jackson?" Dr. Webb returned to the examination table, his movements now faster, more urgent. "We need to check for any identification markers, surgical scars, anything that might tell us who this person is." He carefully began removing the clothing, documenting each item. The iconic sequin glove came off, revealing a hand that bore none of the specific scars and marks that Michael Jackson had accumulated over his lifetime. As the examination continued, a picture emerged that was both bizarre and terrifying. The figure appeared to be approximately the right age, right build, right general appearance. But every specific detail that should have matched Michael Jackson's documented physical characteristics was wrong. It was as if someone had created a replica, close enough to pass casual inspection but failing under forensic scrutiny. "Surgical scars," Dr. Webb announced, pointing to the chest area. "But they're in the wrong locations." Michael Jackson had documented surgical procedures. These incision marks don't correspond to any of them. He took tissue samples, blood samples, hair samples, all the biological evidence that would be needed for definitive DNA analysis. Sarah's phone rang, jarring everyone. It was Captain Rodriguez from the precinct. "Chen, I've got federal agents on my doorstep demanding to know what you're doing. Homeland Security, FBI, people I've never even heard of. What the hell is going on?" "Captain, I need you to trust me. Do not let anyone into that building. Do not discuss this case, and do not allow any outside communication about our location. We've discovered something that's going to cause an earthquake, and we need to control the situation before it goes public." "Sarah, you're scaring me. What did you find?" She looked at the figure on the examination table, at Dr. Webb's grim expression, at the Jackson family members visible on the dropped phone screen. "Captain, the body in Michael Jackson's tomb is not Michael Jackson. And if he's not dead, then where has he been for the past 14 years? The implications crashed over everyone in the room like a tidal wave. If this wasn't Michael Jackson, then the funeral attended by thousands was a lie. The worldwide mourning was based on a deception. The legal proceedings, the estate distributions, the guardianship of his children, all of it rested on the foundation of his death. A foundation that was now revealed to be built on sand. Dr. Webb collected the samples into specialized containers, labeling each one with meticulous care. The DNA analysis will take several hours if we rush it, days if we follow normal protocols. But Sarah, even without DNA, I can testify that this body is not who we were told it was. The question isn't whether we've uncovered a deception. The question is how deep that deception goes and who orchestrated it. Amanda had stopped filming and was frantically typing on her laptop. Detective Chen, you need to see this. I've been doing some research while you were examining the body. Michael Jackson had extensive medical records, right? Hospital visits, treatments, prescriptions. But look at this. She turned the screen to show a series of medical transactions. 6 months after his supposed death, someone accessed his medical record from a hospital in Dubai. And there are pharmaceutical records showing prescriptions filled under an alias that traces back to an account connected to his financial network. Sarah felt the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together, but the picture they formed was so incredible that her rational mind rebelled against it. You're suggesting he faked his own death? But why? And how did he get someone else's body into his casket? I don't know the why, Amanda replied. But the how is becoming clearer. With enough money, enough planning, and enough people willing to stay silent, you could stage almost anything. Sarah stood in the small office that had been set up as their command center, staring at the evidence wall she had created. Photographs, documents, timeline charts, all pointing to a conspiracy so vast it seemed impossible. Yet here they were, holding proof that Michael Jackson's burial had been an elaborate deception. The question that haunted her was whether it had been done to him or by him. Dr. Webb entered with the preliminary DNA results, his expression unreadable. The DNA analysis confirms what we already knew. The body is not Michael Jackson. But there's more. The DNA matches a man named Richard Matthews, a hospital orderly who went missing in Los Angeles in late June 2009. He was reported missing by his sister, but the case went cold within weeks. No body was ever found, until now. An orderly? Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Someone with access to medical facilities, someone who could have known Michael Jackson, or at least known of his schedule, his movements. She turned to her laptop, pulling up the missing person report. Richard Matthews had been 35 years old, roughly the same height and build as Michael Jackson. The photograph showed a man with similar facial features, close enough that with the right preparation, he could have been mistaken for the superstar, especially by people expecting to see Jackson's body. Thomas Garrett had recovered some of his composure, though his hand still shook as he held his phone. The family wants answers. Detective. They are demanding to know if Michael is alive, where he is, why he would do this. His children, they've grown up believing their father died when they were young. Can you imagine what this is doing to them? Sarah felt a pang of sympathy, but she pushed it aside. Emotions wouldn't solve this case. We need to follow the evidence. Amanda, what else did you find in those financial records? Amanda had been working nonstop, her investigative journalism background proving invaluable. It's not just the medical records. There are a series of property transactions that started about a year before Michael's supposed death. Shell companies purchasing estates in various countries, Bahrain, South Africa, Ireland. All of them trace back to financial advisors who worked with Jackson's estate. And here's the kicker. There are ongoing expenses for these properties. Utilities, maintenance, security. Someone has been paying to keep these places operational for 14 years. Jennifer Hayes, the young pathologist, spoke up from where she had been examining Richard Matthews' personal effects. I found something in the suit pocket. A note, handwritten. She carefully unfolded a small piece of paper, yellowed with age. The words written on it were simple but chilling. Forgive me. I needed the money for my sister's medical bills. They said no one would ever know. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Richard Matthews hadn't been killed. He had been a willing participant, at least initially. Someone had offered him money, likely a substantial amount, to play a role in this deception. But willing participant or not, he had still ended up dead in Michael Jackson's casket. We need to find who approached Matthews, Sarah said, her detective instincts taking over. Follow the money trail to his sister. If she received sudden funds around the time of his disappearance, that gives us a lead. She paused, another thought occurring to her. and we need to talk to Dr. Conrad Murray." The mention of Murray's name caused a stir. The physician had been convicted of involuntary manslaughter in Jackson's death, had served his time, and had largely disappeared from public view. If anyone knew the truth about what happened that day in June 2009, it would be him. "Murray was released years ago," Thomas said. "Last I heard, he was living in Arizona, trying to rebuild his life. He has maintained his story consistently, that Michael Jackson died from propofol overdose that was accidental." "Then his story is a lie," Dr. Webb interjected. "The question is whether Murray knew it was a lie or whether he was deceived as well. If Jackson staged his death, he would have needed medical expertise. Murray was there. He had the knowledge. He had access to the drugs. He could have administered something to simulate death convincingly enough to fool paramedics and emergency room doctors." Sarah grabbed her jacket. "I'm going to Arizona. We need to question Murray face to face. Thomas, I need you to quietly reach out to anyone who was at the house that day. The security team, the household staff, anyone who might have seen something. Don't tell them what we've found yet. I want genuine reactions, not prepared statements." Linda Park, who had been quiet for some time, finally spoke. "Detective, I think you need to consider another possibility. What if Michael Jackson was forced into this? What if someone threatened him, his children, his family? He was under enormous pressure, financial, legal, emotional. The child molestation accusations, even though he was acquitted, never truly left him. What if faking his death was the only way he sought to escape?" It was a perspective Sarah hadn't fully considered. Everyone assumed that if Jackson had faked his death, it was by his choice, for his benefit. But Linda was right. He had been pursued relentlessly by media, by creditors, by people with agendas. What if his elaborate deception had been an act of desperation rather than careful planning? Amanda was scrolling through more research on her laptop. "There's something else." In the weeks before Michael's supposed death, there were reports of him meeting with various people, lawyers, financial advisors, and some individuals whose identities were never confirmed. His security team logged visitors, but several entries were redacted or deleted from the records. Someone cleaned up the visitor logs after his death. "Get me those original security logs," Sarah ordered. "Hack them if you have to. We need to know who was visiting Michael Jackson in those final weeks." She knew she was technically asking Amanda to break the law, but at this point, the truth was more important than procedural niceties. They were investigating a conspiracy that had fooled the entire world for 14 years. Dr. Webb was on his phone, speaking with contact at various medical facilities. "I'm trying to track where propofol was sourced in that time frame. If enough was obtained to both fake a death and then later maintain it was an accidental overdose, there should be purchase records, inventory discrepancies, something." The pieces were starting to come together, but they formed a picture so complex that Sarah couldn't yet see the full image. Someone had approached Richard Matthews with an offer he couldn't refuse. Medical expertise had been used to simulate death convincingly. Financial arrangements had been made to maintain properties around the world. Security logs had been altered. And through it all, Michael Jackson had vanished, leaving behind a world that mourned him while he, if he was alive, lived in secret. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold as she read the words. "Stop digging. Detective. Some truths are too dangerous. The people who arranged this are still watching, still powerful. Think about your safety and the safety of everyone in that mausoleum." She showed the text to Dr. Webb and Amanda. "Someone knows we're here. Someone knows what we found." She looked around the room, suddenly aware of how vulnerable they were. "We need to move the evidence to a secure location immediately, and we need to go public with this faster than planned. The longer we wait, the more time someone has to silence us or destroy evidence." The secure FBI facility in downtown Los Angeles buzzed with activity as agents, forensic specialists, and legal experts processed the evidence Sarah's team had uncovered. The body of Richard Matthews had been transported under heavy security, along with all the documentation, samples, and recordings from the mausoleum. Sarah sat in a conference room facing Deputy Director Alan Marshall, a man whose reputation for handling sensitive cases was legendary. "Detective Chen," Marshall said, reviewing the report before him, "what you've uncovered is Without question, one of the most elaborate deceptions in modern history. We confirmed the DNA result, verified the dental records, and corroborated the financial transactions. But the question remains, is Michael Jackson alive? And if so, where is he? Before Sarah could answer, the door opened and 2 agents escorted in a man Sarah instantly recognized, Dr. Conrad Murray. He looked older, thinner, worn down by years of public vilification. But his eyes held a strange mixture of relief and resignation, as if he had been waiting for this moment for 14 years. Dr. Murray, Sarah said carefully, thank you for coming. I know this is voluntary, and I appreciate your cooperation. Murray sat down heavily in the offered chair. When your agents contacted me and told me what you'd found, I knew it was finally time. I've carried this secret for so long, thinking I was protecting everyone. But the truth is, I was just delaying the inevitable. He looked directly at Sarah. Yes, Michael Jackson is alive. And no, I did not kill him, but I did help him die, in a manner of speaking. The room erupted with activity. Agents began recording. Lawyers started taking notes, and Marshall leaned forward intently. Dr. Murray, you understand that anything you say can and will be used in legal proceedings. I understand, Murray replied, and I'm prepared to face whatever consequences come. But you need to understand the context, the pressure Michael was under. By 2009, he was drowning. The financial debts were crushing him. The upcoming tour dates were physically impossible for him to fulfill in his condition. And the constant media scrutiny, the allegations that followed him everywhere, it was destroying him. He came to me with a proposal that seemed insane at first, but the more we discussed it, the more it seemed like the only way out. Sarah pulled out her recorder. Tell us everything, from the beginning. Murray took a deep breath. It started about 6 months before his supposed death. Michael approached me privately, without his security or handlers. He said he needed to disappear, to start over, to give his children a chance at a normal life away from the spotlight. He had been planning it for over a year, consulting with lawyers, financial experts, even former intelligence operatives who specialize in creating new identities. And you agreed to help? Marshall asked incredulously. Not immediately, Murray said. But Michael was persuasive. He showed me detailed plans, backup strategies, contingencies for every possible scenario. And he offered me something I desperately needed, a way to pay off my own debts and provide for my family. I'm not proud of what I did, but I was desperate too. We were both desperate men looking for a way out. Amanda, who had been granted permission to observe, asked the question everyone was thinking. Richard Matthews. How did he die? Murray's face crumpled. That's the part that haunts me every day. Richard was supposed to be a body double. Yes, but he wasn't supposed to die. He was paid handsomely to participate in the staged death scene, to be discovered in Michael's bed, unconscious. The plan was to declare death at the scene, get the body to the hospital where certain personnel had been bribed to confirm death without too rigorous examination, and then Richard would be revived privately and paid off. But something went wrong, Sarah stated. Everything went wrong, Murray whispered. I administered what I thought was a carefully calculated dose of propofol to put Richard into a death-like state. But I didn't know, nobody knew, that Richard had a previously undiagnosed heart condition. The drug interacted with his system in an unexpected way. By the time I realized something was wrong, it was too late. He was actually dying, and there was nothing I could do without revealing the entire plot. The room fell silent as a horrible truth sank in. What had been planned as an elaborate deception had turned into actual manslaughter. Murray had been convicted of killing Michael Jackson, when in fact he had accidentally killed Richard Matthews. Michael was horrified. Murray continued. We both were. But by then, the wheels were already in motion. The paramedics were on their way, alerted by Michael's daughter Paris. The media was gathering. We made a split-second decision to continue with the plan. Michael disappeared into a previously arranged hiding place, and Richard's body became Michael Jackson. I took the fall, as planned, but the guilt of Richard's actual death has eaten at me every day since. Dr. Webb, who had joined the meeting, asked a clinical question. How did you fool the coroner? There would have been an autopsy, toxicology reports. The coroner was part of the arrangement, Murray admitted. not the actual medical examiner, but certain technicians who handled the body initially. They ensured that the autopsy focused on confirming propofol intoxication and didn't delve too deeply into other identifying characteristics. The dental records you mentioned, they were swapped. The medical history, altered. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to withstand initial scrutiny. Nobody expected anyone to question whether the body was actually Michael Jackson. Thomas Garrett, who had been listening via video conference, finally spoke. "Where is he now? Where is Michael?" Murray hesitated, looking around the room at the assembled law enforcement and legal personnel. "Before I tell you, I need assurances. Michael has been living quietly, peacefully, for 14 years. He hasn't hurt anyone. He has been following his children's lives from afar, making sure they are cared for. The estate he left behind has enriched many people. Bringing him back now would destroy so many lives." "Dr. Murray," Marshall said firmly, "Michael Jackson, if he's alive, has been complicit in a conspiracy that resulted in a death, however accidental. His estate has been administering his affairs under false pretenses. There are legal ramifications that can't be ignored. Where is he?" Murray pulled out an old cell phone, one that looked like it hadn't been used in years. "This is the only way to contact him. He changes locations every few months, never staying anywhere long enough to establish a pattern. But he said that if the truth ever came out, he would face it. He's tired, too. Tired of hiding, tired of living as someone else." He placed the phone on the table. "Call him. Let him speak for himself." Sarah picked up the phone, her hands trembling. She dialed the single number stored in its memory. It rang 3 times before someone answered. The voice that came through the speaker was unmistakable, softer, more weary than the young man who had moonwalked across stages worldwide, but still recognizably his. "Hello," Michael Jackson said. "I've been expecting this call for 14 years. The world stopped breathing once more as the king of pop spoke from beyond the grave. In that moment, Sarah knew that nothing would ever be the same. The interviews, the investigations, the legal battles that would follow, all of it would reshape entertainment history, challenge notions of identity and fame, and force society to confront uncomfortable questions about celebrity, privacy, and the price of immortality. Michael Jackson was alive, living in self-imposed exile in a small coastal town in New Zealand, working as a music teacher under an assumed name. He agreed to return, to face the truth, to explain to his children and the world why he had chosen this path. The reasons were complex: crushing financial pressure, the impossibility of living up to his legend, and most importantly, a desperate desire to give his children a chance at normal lives away from the relentless glare of fame. The months that followed brought revelations that shook the entertainment industry to its core. Dozens of people had been involved in the conspiracy, from financial advisors to medical personnel to security experts. Richard Matthews' sister had indeed received a substantial payment, believing her brother had been hired for a film role that required his disappearance. The guilt of his accidental death had haunted everyone involved, creating a conspiracy of silence born from shared culpability. Michael Jackson returned to face trial, not for faking his death, which wasn't actually illegal, but for his role in the events that led to Richard Matthews' death and the subsequent cover-up. The legal proceedings captivated the world, raising profound questions about identity, the right to disappear, and the nature of celebrity in the modern age. His children, now adults, struggled to reconcile the father they had mourned with a man who had watched them grow from afar. Some understood his desperation and forgave him. Others felt betrayed beyond repair. The world watched as a family tried to heal wounds that had festered for over a decade, their private pain now public spectacle once again. In the end, Michael Jackson received a suspended sentence for obstruction of justice and conspiracy, given the unique circumstances and the accidental nature of Matthews' death. Dr. Conrad Murray's original conviction was overturned, though he faced new charges related to the actual events. He too received a reduced sentence, the court acknowledging that while his actions were criminal, they had been born from desperation rather than malice. Sarah Chen became the detective who solved the impossible case, though she took no joy in the fame it brought. She often thought about that morning in the mausoleum, when they opened the tomb and discovered that death itself could be an illusion. The case taught her that truth was rarely simple, that heroes could be flawed, and that sometimes the biggest mysteries hid in plain sight waiting for someone brave enough to look beyond what everyone believed they knew. The story of Michael Jackson's second life and his return became a cautionary tale about fame, pressure, and the extreme lengths people will go to escape the prisons they've built around themselves. Museums curated exhibits about the case. Documentaries explored every angle. Philosophers debated the ethics of choosing to die when life becomes unbearable. And Michael Jackson himself, no longer the king of pop, but simply a man who had tried to outrun his legend, returned to teaching music in a small town, this time under his real name. He gave occasional interviews, always emphasizing one message, that behind every icon is a human being, fragile and flawed, deserving of the same dignity and understanding we would grant to anyone struggling to survive. The world had stopped breathing when they opened his tomb. When breath returned, it came with the understanding that nothing, not even death, was quite what it seemed in the age of spectacle and celebrity. The truth, as it always does, had found its way to light. And with it came the recognition that sometimes the greatest mystery isn't how someone died, but how they chose to live.